Good morning. Welcome to the Village of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for Friday, January 14th, 2022. The first order of business this week. Can you please mute yourselves, who's ever talking? Thank you. The first order of business is the minutes for December 10th, 2021. May I have a motion?
Right. Again, I like to hit home 10 seconds before the channel kick.
I don't know who we're listening to here.
Worry about this. Here, look.
I can hear you.
So can we have a motion for?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we have three determinations today, and the files are available at Village Hall for reviewing. In the application of Justin and Elizabeth Sauter, 3 Georgica Road, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 8-12-5.10 to legalize pool equipment is approved, and to legalize an 8-foot high fence is denied. May I have a motion?
Make a motion.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Pam, can you poll the board?
Mr. McGurk?
Yes.
Mr. McMullen?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connell?
Yes.
And Mr. Rose?
Yes.
In the application of David Sherman, 38 Egypt Lane, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 4-7-14 to construct a driveway with gate, drainage structures, walkways, retaining walls, and landscaping is approved. May I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second, please. Thank you. Pam, can you please poll the board?
Mr. McGurk?
Yes.
Mr. McMullen?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connell?
Yes.
Mr. Rose?
Yes.
Ms. Doyle?
Yes.
In the application of 97 LPL LLC, 97 Lily Pond Lane, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 13-12-6.1 to permit an accessory structure without a principal residency is approved. May I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second, please.
Second.
Pam, can you please poll the board?
Mr. McMullen?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connell?
Yes.
Mr. Rose?
Yes.
Ms. Doyle?
Yes.
So now we're going to move on to the hearings portion of our meeting. Ms. Bennett, could you please read the notice?
Sure. Application of Damon and Lisa List, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 301-8442 for area variances from Chapter 278 zoning to install swimming pool equipment. Variances of approximately 9 feet and 8 feet are requested from Section 278-385C to install swimming pool equipment within a garage building located approximately 11 feet from the side yard lot line and 8 feet from the rear yard lot line, where the required setbacks for swimming pool equipment are 20 feet and any other relief necessary. The subject property is 8,343 square feet in area and is located at 78 Mill Hill Lane in Residence District R40. This project is classified as a Type 2 action in accordance with SEQA.
Thank you, Pam. And Pam, we're all sitting on the application today, I assume, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Tarbert? I believe it's Mr. Tarbert.
Hey, good morning. John Tarbert for the applicant. So this is similar to an application I've had before the board previously on other properties where I see it more and more where people on small properties who can fit a pool and pool equipment on the property would rather not look at the pool equipment or hear it. So if I could just try to share my screen. So. Are you seeing the site plan right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So if you look at the pool, just to the left of it is where the pool equipment would fit. Not an ideal location because one, my client would be staring at it on his property, and two, the noise would be better if we could put it in the garage. So then if I could just, let's see if I can stop share, and then share screen. All right, give me 1 second. Survey. It's not going to work. I was trying to do it, but so anyway, the idea was to move the pool equipment inside the garage. The garage has been built; it's there now. The garage meets setbacks, and there is a survey in the file showing the proposed location of the pool equipment, and it's towards the back of the garage. I did reach out to the Grau family who lives behind Brown families who live behind the property prior to filing the application, just to make sure they would have no objections. They had a request, which was that we not have any openings in the back of the garage to allow the noise to funnel out of the garage towards their property. So actually, there was a design change made, so there are no doors or windows at the back of the garage, except for an architectural one in the attic above the ceiling. So again, the pool equipment would be relocated from a conforming location in the middle of the property to a non-conforming condition inside an existing garage. I don't think there's any detriment because of the idea the applicant is to not see it and have it quieter, and I think that also would be the benefit to all the neighbors.
Okay, thank you. I was speaking with Billy, and I think maybe some sound baffling material on the bottom of the garage would help with the vibration, with the noise. Billy, can you help me on that? Or
Yes. Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. In the past, it has been determined that pool equipment, sometimes on a concrete slab and inside a structure, there could create echo, like an echo chamber, and that's been mitigated by the installation of like a membrane that the pool equipment sits on, and that reduces the vibration. So.
Right, that would make sense to the whole idea here is to not see it or hear it, and I think that makes sense to add like a rubber membrane. I think they have for those.
Yes.
I think it also should be probably screwed into the cement that stops it from vibrating.
any other
Rubber membrane.
Any other board members like to any comments?
Just a question, I just seek confirmation from Billy that the garage conforms with the setback requirements for the garage. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So this is just a question of putting the pool equipment into the conforming garage, which
Correct.
because pool equipment makes it non-conforming from that issue.
Yeah, the garage is actually existing now.
Yep.
So just want to suggest that this makes a lot of sense, and it should be looked at in terms of how the code deals with these issues going forward, because this is an elaborate process for doing something that makes sense.
Totally agree. I think the village board has spoken about it. So hopefully coming down the pipeline, there will be a change.
Okay. I think, thank you. I think we have enough information for the file, Lisa. So let's move on so I have a motion to.
Do you want to?
Anybody from the public?
Oh, anybody from the public? Sorry about that.
Yes, we have a number of callers on the line. Let me unmute them in order. So caller ending with 6697, you're on the air.
It'll be
Good
for the
morning.
list
My name is
application.
Alexander Getty, and I'm calling to give testimony in the Michael Aaron and Christine Aaron ZBA appeal.
Okay, that's at the end of the agenda.
All right.
That's not.
Moving on to the next caller.
I think we're going to have a lot of people on the line that are really for the last hearing.
But we got to check anyway.
Check. So caller ending with 8344. Oh, they just hung up. Caller ending with 6292. You're on the air.
Good morning, board members. Trevor Darrell, Fleming and Darrell PLLC. On behalf of the neighbors to the rear of this property, Rose and Bob Grau. So I think John mentioned that he did reach out to Rose directly. I represent the parents who are actually the owners of the property. And we've discussed the screening and the conformity of the pool equipment location, but John sent me a copy of the site plan showing the rear yard to be planted out, and it's hard to see on the email, but I think it says 13 feet, and then they're going to be on 2 inches separated. But if that's accurate, we just want to see if the board would have the applicant covenant that if any of the installation of those bushes were to die, that the applicant would make sure that they remain sort of alive and replant them if necessary. So the screening, because there used to be screening prior to this development, that the applicant would reinstall this screening and have it, maintain it so that it survives.
The variance is to put pool equipment inside a garage. So I'm not sure where the screening relates to that. You definitely won't be able to see the pool equipment inside the garage. There's also a 6-foot fence already on the property line. The Grau property has 40-year-old evergreens on it, and we're proposing to put in a privet hedge. It's just the vagueness of the request I'm having a hard time with. We're certainly happy to put vegetation in. I just don't know really how to address that.
Sure, I'm working off of the plot plan that was provided. It doesn't show that it's going to be privet hedge. It just says 13 feet by 12 by 2 inches. So whatever that screening is, we just want it to maintain it, so that it remains there as part of the approval process for granting of the variance.
I think the owner may want to in the future put in arborvitae or trees, or I don't know if they want to limit their ability to plant the property based on a re-veg plan. It's just so much easier. The reality here is that this is for a variance to locate pool equipment inside a garage. There's literally no nexus between asking for a vegetation plan as a condition of that variance.
Well, that a vegetation plan was provided to the board as part of the application, and the neighbor,
Anyone?
So
Yeah, we acknowledge,
the plan that
we acknowledge, sir, we acknowledge the neighbor's, your client's concern as the adjoining neighbor. We acknowledge Mr. Target's response. The board will make a determination.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trevor. We have any other caller?
Yes, the next caller on the line, number 2701, you're on the line.
Yeah, I was calling about the brewery, but I don't think that's the issue you're talking about now.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And which hearing was that?
The last one.
Last one, okay. We have one more caller. Number 5557, you're on the air.
I'm calling about the brewery too. What's the order of battle here?
It's the last hearing.
You will be last.
So we'll put you back on hold.
So how do I know when to call in?
Stay on the line and we'll unmute you.
What?
If you stay on the line, we'll unmute you.
Okay.
And that's all the callers.
Thank you. Any board members have any other?
I make a motion to close the hearing.
Okay, I have a second, please.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Bennett, would you please read the next application?
Yes, application of 31 Cooper Lane, LLC, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 301-1240.1 for area variances from Chapter 278 zoning to construct an accessory building. A 108 square foot variance is requested from Section 278 3D7 to permit 499 square feet of accessory building floor area, where the maximum permitted accessory building floor area is 391 square feet. Variances of 9.7 feet and 9.2 feet are required from section 278-3A5C to construct a pool house attached to a garage located 10.3 feet from the rear yard lot line and any other relief, lot line, and 10.8 feet from the side yard lot line where the required setbacks are 20 feet and any other relief necessary. The subject property is 9,570 square feet in area and is located at 31 Cooper Lane in Residence District R40. This project is classified as a type 2 action in accordance with SECRA.
Thank you.
Please note that I'm recusing myself as I was noticed on this project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That was Jim McMullen.
Yes.
Okay, the applicant, Rick?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board
Rick,
members.
let me swear you in.
We have, yeah.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Rick Slater, 38 Scrimshaw Lane in Magansett.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. I thank you for your time and consideration of our application this morning. My wife, Kim, and I have been full-time residents of East Hampton for our entire lives. We are building 31 Cooper Lane for ourselves and daughters for their future. We hope to move in or complete and move in this summer, but as our timelines have been kind of dismembered, we're taking it one day at a time and doing the best we can. And so our apologies go out to the neighboring parcels on Cooper. It was just untimely with the health department, but so be it, and we move forward. When we purchased 31 Cooper Lane in August of 2019, we started with the site plan and demolition of the main house. The redirection of the common driveway utility easement that serves 29 Cooper Lane, also owned by us to the rear, has taken considerable planning and time at the health department, as noted before. To work with the existing accessory structure's footprint would create hardship for the owners at 33 Cooper Lane, the Helfand family, with the possibility of an overcut, unknown utilities below. It would these parcels are tight. And that would be not a wise decision to make. And that's our premise with that being kind of discarded. Going back, the inability to privatize our common border is a concern. In addition to cross over the entire width of our 31 Cooper Lane with traffic, impacting drainage scenarios in the common driveway, neighbors' hardships during construction, and privacy post-construction. These elements have been thoroughly analyzed and thought about, and we go back to take a look at what's existing for over 100 years, and that's the 500 square foot structure that's in dilapidated shape. During the life of the building, it has always had an oil furnace in the workshop, attached shed, and garage. The building is on the property bordered with 33 Cooper Lane. The character and charm of the wooden structure has made the property special until the prior owners were unable to maintain it. That's an unfortunate thing that happens in life. The charm of this building will be brought back well within the scale of the property and the neighborhood that it has been for many years. Going back in time, a little history, Dick Peel, a dear friend of ours, had a workshop back there that he used it 12 months out of the year because it was heated. There he made fishing lures and toys for tots and all of his wood crafts. It was special, and we'll bring that back. I'm not going to do the wood work that he did, but the condition and the classic design will be restored. The condition of the main house and accessory structures have been noted to be unfortunate the past few years. And we, as owners, again, apologize, but it's been a timely effort at the health department. But again, permits are in place for the main house and a small pool. And we are now asking for the variances for the accessory structure. The placement of the accessory structure provides a security privacy element for 29 Cooper Lane, which is the parcel in back, dividing the parcels with the garage to the rear of the property. This garage door will not be seen by either the neighbor to the north or south. Relocation of the accessory structure with a full foundation provides the opportunity to locate pool equipment to reduce noise reduction and to properly plant a 15-foot minimum height Leland cypress hedge, which I find to be the best greenery wall that I have ever planted and maintained. Lastly, the relocating of the accessory structure and maintaining the 100-year-old plus square footage that is in place today would require consideration of 100 square feet, section 278, sub 3D, sub 7, and a 9-foot 4-inch side setback consideration, section 278-3A, sub 5C, does not impact any neighbor negatively. The new structure creates privacy, environmental improvements, proper drainage from the roof line to dry wells, and enhances the neighborhood as a whole. Again, this single roof line provides proper drainage. I went back and forth trying to separate these buildings to bring them into a setback that is within today's standards. It was clumsy, it was dangerous, and I went back to what we have today, which is a single roof line, pulling it off the lot line. And many of our village buildings were built back in the day with co-owners being family members. And so, lot lines were identified by accessory structure walls. I think the improvement will be a great asset to all the neighbors considered. And once again, I thank you for your time. This is a project that has been very dear to us. We're excited, and we're lucky to be able to build such a quaint private village setting. So if there's any questions that I can answer, please ask. And that's my message to you this morning.
Thanks, Rick. I know Billy Hayjack wrote a memo on this. So, Billy, you want to just summarize your memo real quick?
Sure. Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. I provided a memorandum to the zoning board dated January 6th. I attached to that a copy of the survey showing the previously existing conditions prior to the demolition of the residence that was there. And I did that simply so the board could see the location and size of the existing accessory structure that presently exists. That's not depicted on the current site plan, but I thought it was important for the board to see its size and proximity to side and rear yard lot lines. So this is a 9,500 square foot piece of parcel of land in the R40 zoning district. As described by the applicant, the residence was recently demolished and they have a building permit to reconstruct a new residence and swimming pool on the property. The property did go through the planning board process where the planning board agreed to modify the common driveway, and that was shifted to be along the southerly side yard property line.
Billy, the common driveway used to cut through the middle of the back of the driveway, right?
Yeah, it started on the southerly property line and then it sort of curved into the middle of the lot and bifurcated the property. And my understanding is they simply, that's where the driveway previously existed. And so I think it was a matter of ease. They just put the easement over the existing driveway, not really thinking about the future, placement of structures in the rear yard. So that's been approved by the planning board and that easement has been recorded. And now this project is simply to construct, a new accessory building. If you looked at them separately, the garage component of the structure complies with the garage setbacks, which are 10 feet. It's the fact that the pool house shares a common wall with the garage that triggers the need for side and rear yard variances. But if you looked at them separately, the garage actually complies with the setbacks, and the pool house, if it were a standalone structure, would actually comply with the rear yard setback. It would only need a minor side yard setback from the northerly side yard. So that's essentially my summary of the project. If the board has any questions for me, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
And just real quick, as mentioned by the applicant, these lots are pretty narrow. They're long and narrow. Any board members like to speak on this?
Yeah, I have one comment. I have no problem with this application because of the fact that there's an existing building on the site, and it makes sense to move it off the property line. Just want to make it clear that that's the criterion within which the looking for the area variance is being considered. Ordinarily, if there weren't a pre-existing structure on this site, especially given the revisions that have already been made to the area requirements for this, it's not something that would be precedential in terms of, okay, an additional 100 feet for an additional structure for a pool house, given the tight nature of this neighborhood, wouldn't necessarily be appropriate for a thing to ask. But given that it's already there and this is a relocation to a more conforming and appropriate location, I have no problem with it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rose. Philip?
Yeah, I have an issue with the application. These are tiny lots. You're asking for almost 25% greater accessory building area than is allowed. And I think there's an alternative. It's self-created. It was known when the lot was bought. So I do have an issue with this application.
Thank you. Carrie?
Well, I think like what Joe said, I agree. This is a 100-year-old structure. It's already been there. And basically they're just trying to improve a dilapidated accessory structure. So I think that's a good thing. So I have no problem with this.
Okay. That's all sitting on this right, Pam? That's Jimmy's not on this. Okay. And I have no problem with the application. So can I have a motion to close the hearing?
There's callers.
Oh, sorry. Keep forgetting the callers. Sorry.
Caller ending with 1765. You're on the air. That's caller ending 1765. You're on the air. All right, moving on to the next caller. Caller ending 2900. You're on the air.
Thank you, Jody. It's Arthur Graham, 44 Cooper Lane. I just wanted to weigh in on this as a neighbor. I have no problem with what the Slaters are attempting to do here, and I would be in support of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiger. Any other callers?
Yes, caller ending with 1046. You're on the air.
Hi, but it's Stacy Stowe. I want to speak about the brewery, so I'll just stay online.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, caller ending with 8344. You're on the air.
I also want to talk about the brewery, so I'll simply stay online.
Thank you, sir.
I think that's all the new callers. Let me just do one double check. Caller ending with 9215. You're on the air.
Hey, I was calling about the brewery. I think I'm supposed to hold.
All right.
Are we no more callers?
Let me just double check this one last number.
Yep.
Caller with 1765. You're on the air.
Hi, I'm calling about the brewery.
And that's all the callers.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Bennett, can we move on to we're going to Do application Behind the Pond LLC next, please.
Application of Behind the Pond LLC,
Thank you,
Suffolk
Becky.
County Tax Map Number 3019416.1 for an area variance from Chapter 278 zoning to make alterations to a pre-existing non-conforming second residential use. A variance is requested from Section 278 2B1 and 278 7C 2D2 to make alterations to a pre-existing non-conforming accessory cottage use when a residential property is permitted one residence and any other relief necessary. The subject property is 80,507 square feet in area and is located at 50 Highway Behind the Pond in Residence District R160. This project is classified as a Type 2 action in accordance with SEQA.
Is the, Pam, we're all sitting on this application just for the record,
Okay,
right?
thank you, yes.
And the applicant present?
Andrew Goldstein, for the applicant. I have Freddie Greenwald, who was the architect on the project, who would explain it to you in greater detail, and if Pam could swear him in.
Sure. Raise your right hand and state your name and address for the record.
Frank Greenwald, architect, 295 Main Street, Sag Harbor, New York.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Frank.
Great. So I'm the architect representing Behind the Pond LLC. My client, Mr. Bill Brady, came to me several months ago asking me to renovate their cottage. He and his family have owned the property since 2006. It's never been rented. The family has used it seasonally and continuously since their purchase. He's recently remarried and they have a large extended family. And they requested from me a proposal to provide better accommodations for their extended family within this guest cottage or cottage. The existing cottage was built sometime in the 1960s. It contains 6 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms, a living room, dining area, and a kitchen, a small laundry room in one of the baths. It contains a partial cellar with a good percentage of either crawl space or slab on grade. It's a flat roof structure with a 8-foot ceiling height. It has issues. It has a leaky roof, has leaky skylights. It has mold and mildew because it's on this dirt crawl space and slab on grade. It's serviced by an old traditional septic system. It basically looks like an old roadside motel. I'll show you images of it later. There was an addition in 1977 to this by building permit number 5645. And that was an addition of 1 bedroom, which brings it to a total of 6 bedrooms. Our goal in this application is twofold. First is to provide better accommodations for a modern extended family. We're proposing in this application to maintain the existing 6 bedrooms, but to add 2 additional bathrooms so that each of the rooms are en suite. We'll provide proper bedroom closets and a small powder room. Additionally, we're proposing to provide a full basement, which right now there's partial crawl space, as I said, partial slab on grade, and a partial little cellar area. We're proposing to excavate and provide a full basement that will include a proper laundry room, a small gym, and a lot of storage space with a Bilco door because there's no real storage space on the property. The existing main residence has a minimal basement area and also is mostly crawl space. Our second goal is to create a structure that's more in keeping with the traditional shingle style vernacular of the village. We're proposing a simple gable roof structure clad in cedar shingle, traditional wood windows and doors. The property is located on a right-of-way off Highway Behind the Pond. It's fully hedged by a large privet and it's very private. Any changes that we'll make, therefore, will not be visible from off property. Neither will they affect the character of the neighborhood in any kind of a negative manner. There'll be no negative physical or environmental effects caused by this proposed renovation. There are no wetlands nearby. We're proposing to install a new IA septic system. Our client's obviously very environmentally concerned. What we're proposing does not constitute an intensification of the lot. There is no increase in bedroom count, no increase in GFA. There's actually a minimal reduction in GFA. We're removing one of the little bays. The variance is, I think, is not substantial. We're conforming to GFA, we're conforming to setbacks, we're conforming to lot coverage. The need for this variance is not self-created because of the time when the Brady's bought the property. The cottage could have been renovated by getting a special permit. The law changed after they bought the property to declare the cottage to be a non-conforming use and therefore requiring an area variance in order for us to renovate it. I'd like to just pull up, where are we? Here we go. So this is the survey. This is Saska's latest survey of the property. At the top of the page is the Maidstone Club. On the left side is a private right-of-way driveway. Highway behind the pond is down at the bottom, past several properties. This sort of X-shaped building is the main residence, which I think is approximately 6,000 square feet, something like that. There's an existing swimming pool. At the bottom of the page, this L-shaped structure is this existing one-story cottage. And in red are shown some of the improvements that are not related to the GFA of the existing cottage. Let me pull up. This is a floor plan of the existing cottage. There's a wooden deck on the back, which we're proposing to cover with a porch. There's a wooden deck on the front, which we're proposing to cover and turn into a covered porch. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, one of which has a laundry room inside the bathroom. Then there's a living room and a kitchen area. And what we are proposing, let's find it, is this, which is basically basically an interior reorientation of all of the spaces. Still ending up with 6 bedrooms, although each with their own bathrooms. The living room, dining room, kitchen stays where it is. This back area, which is now this open deck, would be a covered porch. And this front area, which is now an open deck, would become a covered porch. The Bilko door stays pretty much where it is. And then on this west side, we're proposing an areaway that goes down to this basement level, which the right side is basically unfinished storage space accessed by the existing Bilko door. And then so a nice home gym with an outside area with a staircase to get out, means of egress, interior staircase, pantry, laundry room, and a bathroom. And let me just show you what it looks like currently. This is what the existing building looks like. It's, sort of a nondescript flat roofed kind of motel looking building. And we're proposing to basically just add a gabled roof to the top of it, and make it look more like
I'm listening to a hearing. I'm going to call you back in a couple of minutes. Okay.
Something traditional. Yeah, that's it. If anybody has any questions for me or for Andy Goldstein, we're happy to answer.
I have a quick question, Frank. What's behind the 2 garage doors currently that are shown?
There's an existing garage. There's an existing 2-car garage as part of the existing GFA of the building.
Okay.
Frank, it's the same footprint as what's currently exists now. Is that what you guys are working on?
It's the exact same footprint. Yes.
And you're going to knock, I assume you're going to knock what the structure down is there, and you're going to build a whole new structure to.
Well, I think the plan would be to try to keep as much as is reasonable of it. Build a roof, a gabled roof on top of it. We haven't sort of really gotten that far into it, but yeah, the plan would be to keep as much of the structure as we can. There's a slab on grade, obviously, where the garage is. There's a small cellar under this area, and then this is a crawl space, a dirt floor crawl space. So the floor framing, I think, pretty much is okay. The walls are okay. You just have to sister it up and add a roof.
Any other board members want to comment?
Yeah, I have a few questions first to Billy Hajek regarding the history of the regulations in terms of compliance. So when this structure was originally built, which I believe you said was the applicant said was in the early 70s, is that correct?
We think sometime in the 60s it was built. There was an addition in the 1977, one bedroom. This bedroom in the back was added.
Gotcha. So
They did some work on it in 1970 also, I think.
So, Bill, are you on?
Yes, I am here, Joe.
Can you just speak to the evolution of the regulations regarding creating accessory or ancillary or additional structures? When this was built in the 1960s, it was a permitted addition?
Yes. So in the 60s, you could build a second dwelling. I'm presuming it was done under the allowance that if you had property that was subdividable, like if you had a 10-acre lot in a 5-acre zone, you could build a second dwelling unit without subdividing your property, as long as you could demonstrate you could subdivide. This was probably in a 1-acre zone at one point in time in the 60s when they built their cottage. And I'm kind of assuming that the cottage was built under that requirement. Sometime in the, and I'm paraphrasing here, I believe it was in the 80s, second dwellings were made special permits. And an applicant would have to obtain a special permit to construct or modify a second dwelling unit located on a singular piece of property. Then in the 2012 era, the village made second dwellings non-conforming uses and eliminated the special permit requirement, but allows secondary dwellings to be renovated or altered by way of an area variance. So even though it's a non-conforming use, the code says that you can alter it with just meeting the area variance standards.
Gotcha. Understood.
So it was permitted and conforming when it was built.
Understood.
Yeah.
So, there are a series of certificate of occupancies that describe it as it is today.
Understood. Thank you. Second question has to do with the height. So the existing height of the structure is at least, I believe I saw it's 9 feet. Is that?
That is correct. The existing structure is about 9 feet tall. It's an 8-foot plate.
Right. And the proposed new height is 22, I think it's something like that.
22.7.
I would. Thank you, John. Yeah, it sort of varies. The highest point. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know this off the top of my head.
HA3.
Thank you, John. There we go. 22'7".
And can you just show again what the enclosure of the porches is where?
So they're let me just pull up the floor plan. Here we go. So in the rear, there's an existing wood deck out here, which we're proposing to put a bluestone floor with a covered porch roof on it, pretty much in the existing area of the deck, and the same thing in the front. There's an existing wooden deck.
It appears, Frank, that both of those are reduced in size, correct?
The rear one is reduced in size. Actually, the front one is probably reduced a little bit in size. We're proposing to take off this little bay here just for design reasons also. So the GFA actually comes down. And just, I would also mention that none of the spaces would have ceiling heights greater than 15 feet. So, they wouldn't be counted twice.
What's happening in that additional 7 feet?
just higher ceilings. Right now, the building has 8-foot ceilings throughout.
No, I understand, but you're saying if none of the buildings if none of the rooms has ceiling heights higher than 15 feet.
Well, you can see here, this is sort of an outline of a tray ceiling in one of the bedrooms. Above that would just be mechanical space, would be ductwork and probably air handlers.
Or like attic space.
So an attic.
Yeah, just an attic.
I think it's an improvement to the neighborhood. The design.
I agree.
I think it's a win-win. But I'm only one member. Philip, do you have any?
Yes, I think, while you do have a legally conforming pre-existing use with the 6 bedrooms, I think by picking up the additional GFA of the garages and converting them to bedrooms, it's an intensification. I also think the increase from the 9 feet to the 22 feet is substantial. The applicant already has 6 bedrooms, that are usable. I understand you want to reconstruct the space. I don't have an issue with the outside porches, and I don't have an issue with the basement, but the rest I do. So those are my comments.
If I could just clarify one thing, there is no increase in GFA because the garage counts as part of the existing GFA.
Okay.
So there is no increase in the GFA of the structure. In fact, as I said, there's a minimal decrease in GFA.
I just, picking up on Phil's point, there's a substantial increase in the bulk of this structure, and may well be architecturally improved over the aesthetic of the original structure, but it's substantial. And question is, my question is, has there been any overt outreach to the neighbors regarding the impact of this? Do we know that they are aware? I know these things get noticed, but as we know from our own, sometimes it's hard to figure out exactly what's going on just from the notice that one gets in the mail. Has there been any expression or interaction with the neighbors regarding this proposal?
Honestly, I don't know whether my client has reached out to the neighbors. I honestly don't know that.
Can I say something to that effect? Because I do know the neighbors. I told them of this hearing today, and they said they have no problem with they didn't want to be on the Zoom. They had no problem with it.
Thanks, Carrie.
I have a question for Billy. Billy, what's the maximum height for an accessory structure right now? 15?
Well, no. Well, it would be an accessory building, which can be no larger than 250 square feet, is 12 feet. A garage, I believe, is 20 feet. This structure is regulated by the dwelling, maximum height for a dwelling unit.
I understand.
Yep. But those are the allowable heights for accessory structures.
Okay. Do we have any callers on the line?
Yes, we have 10 callers on the line. So I'll unmute the first caller. 6697, you're on the air.
Peace.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I've already stated that I'm waiting for the Michael Aaron group hub discussion.
Thank you, sir. Be patient. We're almost there.
All right, caller 10046, you're on the line. Caller ending with 101046, you're on the line. All right, moving to the next caller. Caller ending with 6763, you're on the line.
Yeah, that's me. I'm waiting for the Michael Aaron hearing, the discussion.
Thank you, sir. We'll be there shortly.
Caller ending with 3659, you're on the line. All right, going to the next caller. Caller ending with 9215. You're on the line.
Oh, hi. I'm calling with some concerns about the renovations to the brewery and expansion of, the renovation of the property and creation of a brewery there.
Yes, sir. We're going to be on that hearing in about 5 or 10 minutes. So if you could please just wait on the line.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
All right, let me just check if anyone else. Caller ending with 8635. You're on the air. Caller ending with 8635. You're on the air. All right, moving to the next caller. And this is the last caller, 1765. You're on the air.
We've had that call before.
Sorry about that.
I'm here for the brewery.
Thank you. Seems like everyone else is here for the brewery.
Make a motion to close the hearing.
Before we move to close the hearing on this, I just want to underscore, I guess, in agreement with Phil's point about the height, and looking at this image that we now have on our screen, where there is a gabled roof to the, I guess it's on the right as you look at it, right wherever the hand is, right? That height is what height? The top of the peak of that roof?
Height is 18 foot 11 inches.
18. I would just encourage, and I would suggest that it should be possible to achieve all the objectives while making the other height also conform with the 18 foot.
Yeah, it's basically just a function of maintaining a traditional pitch and the width of the existing building. So this at the bottom is a side view of this gable. So that gable is based upon a traditional pitch and the width of the existing building. I mean, we probably could do something to flatten the pitch of it out, make it look more
just consistent with the other two, and would bring it in conformity with the accessory.
Yeah, but this has nothing to do with it.
No, I understand. I understand this.
Somewhat arbitrary designation.
We have one more caller.
I get I'm not going to argue it. I just would make the point. I think it's consistent with the point that Phil made. It's a substantial increase in bulk in the mass of not the density, I understand, but the mass of the structure. And it would seem aesthetically, it would not be problematic to bring it down to the consistent roof line.
Yeah, we could probably do something to get it to look right.
It's not a dimensional variance.
What's that?
It's not a dimensional variance. Bulk has nothing to do, it's the use that we're talking about.
I would say also the building that's there now is so incongruous. It's such a low flat building that yes, it's maybe substantial, but that building, as the chairman said, this will be a big improvement over what's currently there, which also it doesn't look like it goes with the area at all.
With all due respect, the bulk of the building is not an issue. It's the intensification of whether the use is being intensified.
But clearly the use of the building is being intensified. So the question is how to accommodate the intensification of the use in an appropriate way.
I don't understand how it's being intensified.
Andy, Mr. Chairman, this is Lenny Ackerman. Can I just say something?
Andy,
Mr. Rose, I think, is on the wrong board. This is not the ARB. This is not the DRB. This is the zoning board. We've met the criteria. We've satisfied the criteria.
Mr. Chairman, I don't need to.
Mr. Rose, let me speak. Mr. Rose, I let you speak. Allow me to speak, please. Mr. Rose, is that all right?
It's not if you make it an ad hominem attack, Mr.
Direct attack on him.
Mr. Rose, Mr. Rose, I'm entitled to speak. You can speak all you want. You're a member of the board. I'm making a comment. I respectfully ask, Mr. Chairman, that you close the hearing.
Philip, you had a motion on the floor?
I did.
Okay. Can I have a second?
Yes, and a single left,
All in favor?
and a three-wheeler above.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, we're on our last hearing of the day. Pam, would you like to read it, please?
Sure. Application of
No worries. No worries.
Can you please mute yourself?
Andy. Application of Michael and Christine Aaron, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 301232, to appeal a building inspector interpretation that the proposed land use for a pending site plan application of Mill Hill Realty Corp. is a permitted use within the manufacturing industrial zoning district. The property subject to this appeal is located at 1712 Some Lane, contains 70,913 square feet of area.
Bulk of it. Just not, it's not part of the variance.
Andy,
Andy, mute yourself.
it's happened too much.
Yes, no.
Please.
Didn't work. Contains 70,913 square feet of area and is in the manufacturing industrial zoning district. This is classified as a type 2 action in accordance with SEQA.
Is the applicant present?
Yes, Mike Walsh and I represent Michael and Christine Aaron. They're the appellant. They brought the appeal in this case.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, please.
Yes.
So just for the benefit, and I know Mr. Walsh knows this, and I know the board knows this, but for the benefit of the public, anyone who wants to be heard, this is a little different than what we usually see at the zoning board. This is an appeal from what is purported to be an interpretation of the building inspector. So as a result, the burden of proof is on the person challenging the interpretation, and we're on the very narrow issue as to A, whether or not an interpretation was made, and B, if it was it in accordance with the zoning ordinance? Whether or not you think the brewery is a good idea is irrelevant here. Whether or not you think it'll bring too much traffic is irrelevant here. The key is just, it's a very, very narrow issue. And we have a number of speakers. So I would ask everybody if you wish to be heard, great. But please don't repeat what prior speakers have said. That's really not helpful for the board in making its determination. If you want to come on and say, I agree with what the prior speaker said, and that's wonderful. And of course, the board wants to hear that. But again, we're just here for a very narrow focus and a very narrow issue. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for the opportunity just to set the record straight.
Thank you, Mr. Messina. Mr. Walsh, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for pointing out the fact that this is in fact an appeal of what my clients, Michael Aaron and Christine Aaron, who are the next door neighbors to the property that's the subject of the appeal, deemed to have been an interpretation by your building inspector entered in the minutes of an August 3rd, 2021 DRB meeting. The building inspector was there. He was there for a purpose, apparently to opine that the use that is proposed to be commenced on this lot was permitted under your zoning code. When that was brought to my attention, I obtained a copy of the minutes, reviewed the minutes, and it's very clear to me that that is in fact an interpretation. The building inspector, as we know, in the state of New York and in the village of East Hampton, specifically, is charged initially with the interpretation of the zoning ordinance. In this particular case, the question is, what use is being proposed, number one? And number two, is the use proposed permitted under the zoning code? Only the building inspector in the first instance has the authority to make such an interpretation or determination, which in fact he did at that August 3rd, 2021 meeting. What's the remedy of an aggrieved adjoining landowner? And consistent with the chairman's comments, this is not about traffic. It is not about whether or not people like breweries or otherwise. It's about whether or not the zoning board of appeals, as the agency, the sole agency charged with reviewing building inspectors' interpretations of the meaning of your zoning code, whether the zoning board of appeals, after you look at the code, you look at the proposed use in the four corners of the application, whether you conclude that the use is either prohibited, as Mr. and Mrs. Aaron contend, my clients, or if it is permitted, as the building inspector apparently contends. Now, what I've done, Mr. Chairman, in the spirit of brevity, is I've submitted a series of letters to your board. Initially with the zoning appeal, I filed the zoning appeal with attachments and exhibits. I also filed a letter back in November, which is in the form of a memorandum explaining our position. And I filed more recently in response to Mr. Balsam's memorandum, which he was kind enough to email to me. I appreciate that. I filed a response, and I've also filed 2 additional letters. It's difficult in the Zoom context. Typically what we do is, we hand up exhibits at these hearings, but I think I've got everything in writing, documented and memorialized for your board, made part of your record, which is very important for my client.
Yeah, Mr. Walsh, I'll acknowledge that we have received those. They are in the file, and thank you for doing so.
Thank you. Now, let's get to the heart of the matter. Number one, in order for you to determine what the use is, you've got to look at the application. And what do we see in the application? First and foremost, if you look at the designer of the plans that were presented to the Zoning Board of Appeals, it's a design firm by the name of OPA, which is based in Austin, Texas. Why is that important? It's important because OPA is in the business of designing brewery tap rooms of the sort that's been made part of the application. So when we start talking about terminology and we start defining the use, and we determine and we examine what this use is going to be if approved, we've got to look at the application, because that's what was before the DRB. That was what was before the building inspector, and it's now been made part of your file. And what do we see? What we see is a plan that presents approximately 7,000 square feet of tasting rooms and beer garden areas. And this is the applicant's own terminology, by the way. On the plan, if you look closely at the plan, what's proposed is not, in the first instance, not a restaurant as defined in the East Hampton Village Code. And I'll reference that definition in a moment. What is proposed is a tavern, a brewery tap room. The building measured out, the total square footage is approximately 12,000 square feet. And we don't have enough details in the plan to fine tune the exact number, but approximately 7,000 square feet of that 12,000 is a tap room or a tavern or a bar room. Why do we say that? Well, Mr. Balsam has made he's made note of the fact that these terms aren't specifically defined in your code, but we do have a definition of a restaurant, and we do have examples throughout the east end of Long Island of what a brewery is, what a tavern is, what a tap room is, and what a bar room is, what a bar is. And what we see is the large majority of the square footage of this project is devoted to the sale and service of alcoholic beverages, in this particular case, beer and ale, a craft brewing operation made up of 2 large tasting rooms. One's on the first floor, the second's on the second floor. It's a 2-story building, and a so-called beer garden. What would be happening in the beer garden is a little bit vague, hasn't been specifically described by the applicant. They mentioned there will be some seating in the beer garden. The beer garden, if you scale it out, is approximately 2,000 square feet, an open walled area defined as a beer garden. So we've got the 2 tasting rooms, we've got the beer garden, we've got an additional area referred to as an 800 square foot brew patio and porch. Again, that's undefined space as to whether there'll be tables or it'll be occupied. It adjoins the beer garden. It appears to be an area that will be occupied as part of the beer garden. When you add that all up, it's approximately 7,000 square feet of space. So there's no doubt when you look at the plan that's been filed by the applicant that the substantial primary principal use of the project as proposed is a tavern, a bar, a brewery, tap room. That's how we're defining it today before your board. And I've put, I think, ample evidence in my correspondence and in my exhibits to prove that out. So how do we get to a restaurant? The answer is we cannot get to a restaurant. Mr. Balsam's most recent correspondence now works in the term restaurant in a big way. What happened is the application essentially changed as of a few days ago, and now it's been defined as a restaurant. The problem is that a restaurant, as defined in the East Hampton Village zoning code, is specifically expressly permitted in a manufacturing zone. However, the restaurant must be solely used for the preparation and service of food in furnished dining areas, and no form of a tavern or bar is permitted as part of the restaurant use. The only alcohol service in a restaurant is accessory, and the terminology your code uses may be accessory to the service of food. What we did in our most recent correspondence is we gave you 3 examples of brewery tap rooms, brewery taverns, brewery bars here on the East End. And what they show is precisely what has been designed by OPA, the Austin, Texas-based brewery taproom design firm that drafted these plans and provided them to the architects to file with your DRB and now with the ZBA. This is a brewery taproom. It's a bar, tavern. It is prohibited under the restaurant definition. By the way, as an aside, I have discussed this with numerous colleagues here in the local bar, and everyone's reached the same conclusion. We clearly, Mr. and Mrs. Aaron, are strenuously opposing this application. This is our first step in that opposition. This is a residential neighborhood. My clients live in a house that was built in 1799. I understand that's a DRB, ARB issue down the road, but I want to make sure that that you understand why we are here and how strenuously my clients intend to oppose this application. This is our first stop. We appreciate your looking at our materials. We appreciate your hearing us today. I know there are a good number of neighbors that want to be heard. If you have any questions for me, I am glad to answer them. I implore you to review our submissions. We've referenced various websites and various materials that you and your staff can look at. and your building inspector as well. And I suspect that when you do review those materials, you will conclude, as have I, and most attorneys and professionals and neighbors for that matter. These are smart, educated people that are going to talk to you this afternoon, this morning. We've all concluded that when you look at your zoning code, you look at the restaurant definition, it clearly prohibits the use that has been applied for. And we respectfully submit that your determination should reverse and annul the building inspector's determination to the extent he opined that the use was permitted in this commercial zone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Should we go to the callers or the board members? Would you like to speak first?
I say go to the callers.
Thank you.
Will I be able to speak?
Yes, Mr. Aarons?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Am I permitted to speak now?
Yes, sir. Yep. Go ahead, please.
Okay.
Mr. Aaron, let me swear you in. Please raise your right hand and state your name and address for the record.
Michael Aaron, 19 Toilsome Lane, East Hampton.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Aaron, before you begin, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you this. The chair has given you every right to speak, and you have it. You have, however, a very able attorney who has represented you very well here. And oftentimes when clients speak, it's not helpful to their cause. Having said that, the decision as to whether or not to continue is yours, sir. But I just would be remiss if I didn't tell you that.
Thank you. Greatly appreciated. Should I speak now?
If you'd like to, sir.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to read my statement that I have spent a great deal of time working on to prepare. And I will send a copy of that statement to the village administrator so they can have it as a printed record. Well, when I first moved to 19 Toilsome Lane in 1983, the Diamonds, who had a furniture store in the village and a warehouse that still exists on the property next to my home, they came by to graciously welcome me as their new neighbor. When I purchased mattresses for my 3 bedrooms, they even gave me a special price as a neighborly gesture. They were very nice people. The Diamonds, who I knew 30 some odd years ago, are long since gone from Toilsome Lane. Those were the Diamonds who cared about their village and neighbors. Now there is a new generation of Diamonds, and based on what Christopher Diamond wants to build, I doubt that he or his partners care that much about their village or their neighbors. To me, they seem to care more about, quote, greed over need, close quote, that Adam and Ellen Goldstein wrote in their November 18th letter to the East Hampton Star. Excuse me. If they cared, they would have never entertained the absurd concept of building an out-of-place, oversized 140-seat brewery with an unknown number of the actual capacity of patrons, a tavern, beer garden, brew pub on a site that is large enough to hold weekly outdoor concerts that could attract thousands of rowdy partygoers, fueled with several bottles of fresh brewed beer that would infringe on the quality of life that has been enjoyed for centuries by their neighbors and the village. If they cared, they would be concerned that they are building a brew pub that violates the zoning code, that has an entrance and exit near a 90-degree blind curve where approaching cars appear only a few seconds before patrons will make turns to arrive or leave that 2-story beer hall and brewery. Don't they even care about the safety of other people or the potential chance of a loss of life? If they cared, would they be concerned that when the beer hall becomes a successful destination, that it is only a stone's throw from the East Hampton train station, that it offers an abundance of parking that will attract large crowds who, after having several beers, will be in danger when walking back to the train station or their cars on the poorly lit, toilsome and gingerbread lanes that have no sidewalks to protect them from the heavy traffic. If they cared, would they have taken into consideration the past damage done to the East End?
Mr. Aarons, this is not an indictment of the applicant or even an examination into their motivation. This is very strictly whether or not the building inspector's determination was or is not an interpretation and was or was not correct. So your comments are appropriate to the board, the DRB, perhaps even the planning board if there's something to be done there, but they're not helpful here. And I cautioned everybody before we did this hearing that this wasn't about the application in chief. It was about a very limited issue. So I'd ask you to please stick to that issue.
Well, I would just like to read reference to one of 25 letters that appeared in the East Hampton Star, and then address something about the definition of restaurants. What I'd like to do is end what I was going to be saying, the fact that Michael Braverman wrote a brilliant letter saying that when he stated this simply, quote, "It is simply one of the worst development ideas propounded for a village that takes pride in its 372-year history." And he continues, "If the authorities allow this reckless intrusion, they will set a terrible zoning precedent." And then finally, what I would like to say is I'd like to address an important point that appears in the brewery attorney's letter of rebuttal dated January 12th. Up until then, they never referred to the beer pub as a restaurant, but instead as a beer garden, tasting room, small-scale brewery, etc., which it is. However, now they're attempting to change courses in midstream after realizing their horrendous error by not realizing that the land is not zoned for beer gardens. So they are now trying to call it a restaurant. It is not a restaurant. In their incorrect argument that it is now a restaurant, they write on page 2, quote, "Restaurants that brew their own beer are a popular version of a restaurant, generally seen as," and in bold letters, quiet in bold letters, "uses that do not keep late night hours and are," in bold letters, "compatible with surrounding residential and retail neighborhoods." Compatible. Well, I think they more or less shot themselves in the foot, because in reference to compatible to the neighbors, just in case they haven't read my 2 ads or the numerous anti-beer hall letters in the Star, the neighbors do not want the beer hall, and we are up in arms against it. In reference to quiet that they had in bold letters, you've got to be kidding unless you're planning to limit the outdoor entertainment to someone playing a harp. There will be an abundance of loud music destroying the peace and tranquility of our neighborhood. Mr. Balsam, I addressed it to Mr. Balsam who sent that letter. Most 140-seat beer halls with an unknown indoor and outdoor capacity are noisy. They are not quiet. Well, to end this, on behalf of my wife, Christine, and our neighbors and homeowners, and all of the people who have been supporting us in this fight against something that should not be there, I really hope from the bottom of my heart that the appeals board saves the village of East Hampton from this unwanted beer hall. The time has come to stop this madness, and you, the members of the East Hampton CBA, can do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aarons. We have to call, any board members like to speak yet, or we'll go to the callers? Go to the callers?
Yeah, I'd like to just say one thing.
Go ahead.
Because I've heard it a couple of times now. In Mr. Walsh's submission dated January 13th, 2022, he includes the minutes from the August 3rd, 2021 meeting. On the bottom of page 1, going to page 2, Alex Balsam appeared on behalf of the applicant and stated the proposal is to remove the tile cow barn, place it with a new addition to existing block building, and have a restaurant that basically brews its own beer. So there would be a restaurant component, a beer production component, and a kitchen component. So it just seems that people are saying the word restaurant wasn't used until recently. It seems that it was used back in on August 3rd when the building inspector opined. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Jimmy, Joe, everybody, Carrie, you're okay? We'll just keep moving on to the callers.
Yeah, I'm going to have a bunch of questions for Billy and Tom afterwards, but let's see.
Why don't we go to the callers?
Yeah.
All right.
Here.
First caller ending with 6697. You're on the line.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexander Guest. Mr. Chairman, Mr. McWork, and Sam, and the rest of the board members, hello.
Let me swear you in. I'm sorry, let me swear you in.
You hear me?
Yeah, let
pardon.
Yeah, Pammy.
Please raise your right hand and state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Alexander Guest.
And your address?
Is 50 Route 114, East Hampton.
Thank you.
11937.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Please go ahead, Mr. Guest.
All right, thank you. So I've shortened this, which everyone will be happy about. Where I am, just very briefly, is by Grant Heating and Plumbing. So if you were to go from the proposed site and make a right turn towards the Buell traffic circle that we all are familiar with, and make a right at the circle, Grant Heating and Plumbing and my house are down in that direction. Each are about equidistant from the 17 Toilsome Lane to Buell, and then from Buell to my house. So I'm not about, each section's about a quarter of a mile. There is a lot of traffic. I'm a concerned citizen. There's a lot of traffic on Route 114. And I am concerned that there will be more traffic coming if this brew pub is built and operational, especially from Sag Harbor, because that connects directly with Sag Harbor. There's a very large amount of traffic till about 6:30, summer evenings, and as we all know and love East Hampton, it's very nice to sit outdoors in an evening. Things start to quiet down at 6:30 or 7. The Brew Tavern is open, and if there is music there or noise, I think it will carry across in the evenings as it quiets down. So that's where I am. Secondly, I happen to have gone, my son and his daughter, my granddaughter, live in Hoboken. And I am on the computer right now, and we went to a place called Zeppelin Hall, ZeppelinHall.com, and it says Beer Garden. And it is the address, anyway, it's beergarden.hall. It's in, it's in Jersey City, 88 Liberty View Drive. And we went in after bike riding and walked in about 4 in the afternoon. There were numerous tables. We sat down to have a beer. There were speakers about every 10 feet on a fence around the beer garden, and they were serving food, and sausages were on the grill. I guess they have capacity for about 200 people. And then a live band was in the process of getting set up to go at 6 o'clock. So I had a very recent experience this summer, this August, with a beer garden, and there's a tremendous amount of noise, people talking loud, people drinking, etc. Final point, in the spirit of brevity, is I walk. It's a very pleasant walk in the evenings from my house to Dayton Lane and then to Church Street and into town. I am on Google Maps, and I have took a little compass and from 17 Toilsome Lane, and the closest street to it obviously is the townhomes, but Maidstone Lane, if you make a circle with a piece of cloth from that one point as a compass, Church Street is very, very close, less than 1 inch away, towards East Hampton High School. Across the other side of the tracks, there is McGurk Lane, which is a little further away, and then so you just plot a circle, and I don't know, I can't calculate how
Sir,
many.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but again, we're way off the topic. Way off the topic. So please, if you have something to say about the building commissioner, if you have something to say about the building inspector's interpretation, we welcome it. Again, the other issues are for the DRB or other bodies, not this board on this application. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to my testimony. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for calling in. Do we have more callers, I assume?
Yes. Going to the next caller.
Thank you.
Caller ending with 8344. You're on the air.
Hello.
Okay, Ms. Bennett, can you please get on me?
Yeah, my name is Michael Nachman. At
Mr.
5
Nachman,
Maidstone Avenue.
Please raise your right hand and restate your name and address for the record.
Michael Nachman, Nachman, 5 Maidstone Avenue, East Hampton.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Nachman, please.
Okay. I'm a concerned resident living, near the proposed brewery pub, and I'm concerned with the quality of life issues, some of which have been raised, and as has been pointed out, that is not the primary purpose of this meeting. What I would like to emphasize is the very strong points made by Mr. Walsh, the attorney for the Aarons, and let the board understand that this is a very, very serious issue, and that there's much evidence to support Mr. Walsh's testimony. So please understand that there's a great deal of weight that should be put on his testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nachman.
All right, unmuting the next caller.
Thank you.
Caller ending with 2701. You're on the line.
Hi, my name's Alicia Sullivan. I'm at 10 Maidstone Avenue, Lane. And I just want to say...
Let me swear you in. Let me swear you in. Yes. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'd like to echo what Michael Nachman said. He's my neighbor. And also, based on the introductory comments of the board, I defer to council. I'm quite concerned about this issue as well. Thank you.
Thank you for calling in. Thank you for taking the time. Next caller, please.
Going to the next caller, ending with 5557. You're on the line.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Yes, Pam, can you please?
Hello.
Please raise your right hand and state your name and address for the record.
Eric Gibson, 30 Toilsome Lane.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Gibson, please.
Thank you. My name is Eric Gibson. I've lived on Toilsome Lane for 22 years. In his January 12th letter, Mr. Balsam states there was nothing wrong with not following proper procedure by failing to make a public announcement in advance of the August 3rd meeting, DRB meeting. That meeting was, he claims, a, quote, first work session, close quote, rather than a public hearing, and the village code stipulates that advance notice is required only for the latter. Except that there is no such thing as a first work session. His argument fails because he's talking about something that doesn't exist. There's no mention of a first work session or anything like it, either in the village code or in the DRB's application guidelines. Nor is there anything in the minutes of that August 3rd meeting to indicate that it was anything other than a formal application review process. The DRB's general instructions do allow for preliminary vetting process, what it calls a pre-submission conference, which it defines as an informal meeting with agency members, or in case of a zoning board of appeals application, with the building inspector. But this was not an informal private meeting. And so members
sir,
of the
can
committee,
you tell me what
if it
that has
walks
to
like
do
a
with
public,
the building inspector's statements and whether or not that was an interpretation and whether or not it was correct, please?
you're about to find out. And so, members of the committee, if it walks like a public hearing and quacks like a public hearing, it is a public hearing, which means the required public notice should have been given in advance of it. Why so much effort by Mr. Balsam to evade public scrutiny and claim special circumstances for doing so where none exist? It's hard to escape the conclusion that this was done for the same reason that, in the immortal words of Mr. Walsh, he coyly relabeled the brewery, tavern, beer garden as a restaurant, because he knows the proposal is in violation of the relevant village codes, and he is trying to obscure that fact. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Thanks for taking the time. Do you have any other callers?
Yes, we have 15 more callers. I'll go to the next one. Caller ending with 3659. You're on that line. Give me one sec. Caller ending with 3659. You're on the line.
I'm on the line. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi.
Please raise your right hand and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Sandra McManus, and my husband and I own 26 Toilsome Lane, East Hampton.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I had prepared a lot of things to say that obviously aren't appropriate during this particular hearing. I would like to have some information as to when that moment will be or should have been, because there's a lot about the quality of life to all residents in the area of this proposed brewery pub that is very important to be considered. Safety is
sure, and I'm happy to answer that. I'm happy to answer that for you. Those things would be appropriate in front of the DRB with the pending DRB application. So whenever the DRB convenes again, you'll have an opportunity to be heard there. I'm sorry, go ahead.
We'll be following that because it does seem to be a little bit secretive, all of this. So we're going to be carefully following that. But I would like to say that I totally support what Mr. Walsh said. I think the findings of the building inspector need to be completely reviewed, completely revised. This is not a restaurant. This is a brewery pub. It's dangerous. It's going to change not only our quality of life, but the whole feeling in the village of East Hampton, it's wrong. I would also like to know if there's been an environmental impact statement provided. I think that's important and required. And I'd also like to ask each one of you on the Zoning Board of Appeals if you personally would like one of these built across the street from your home. So please consider that as you are making your decisions today or whenever that happens.
Okay, thank you. Let me just, if I could suggest to you, I know you're keenly interested in the proceedings before the DRB. You can sign up on the village website and you'll get notice for each hearing of what the agenda is. Pam's office is just fantastic in the communication in that regard. So I'd urge you to do that. And you'll be kept up to date on everything that's being considered by the DRB and when it's being considered.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Messina.
I'm sure
Thank you, Mrs. McManus. Can we go on to the next caller?
Yes, next caller ending with 1765. You are on the air.
Good afternoon.
Caller ending 1765, you're on the line. All right, we can move to the next caller.
Thank you.
Caller ending 1046. Give me 1 sec to unmute.
Thank you.
Hello?
You're on the line.
Pam?
Thank you.
Please raise your right hand and state your name and address for the record.
Stacy Stowe, 27 Toilsome Lane, East Hampton.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Stowe.
Thank you. I am calling in today to give you a sense of how many of us are concerned about the issue, and I won't waste your valuable time by repeating what many people have already said. I do concur completely with my very erudite neighbor, Eric Gibson, my very passionate neighbors, Michael Aaron and Christine Aaron, about the safety and quality of life issues, and certainly with the legal issues raised by Attorney Walsh. All of us who live in that neighborhood are aware that it is not exactly purely residential, and we knew that moving in. If there were going to be a restaurant there that was in keeping with the kind of restaurants that are around us, I don't think we would be phoning in today or be writing letters like we have been. We're concerned about the kind of establishment it's going to be. We tried to be good neighbors and work with the applicant. There was a lot of secrecy. I hope going forward there can be more openness. And I want to end by thanking you for this very important job and consideration that you have. That's all.
Thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time to call in. Can we go to the next caller, please?
Yes, next caller ending with 8635. You're now on the line.
Can you? Good afternoon.
Caller ending 8635. Are you there? All right, we can move on. Caller ending 4822. You're on the line. Caller ending 4822.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Do you want me to speak?
Please.
Yeah.
Yes. Please raise your right hand and state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Adam Goldstein. At 43 Gingerbread Lane, East Hampton. I just want to concur.
Do you swear to tell the truth? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
I just want to concur with the many comments made by my neighbors here, and I just want to also impress upon the fact that the argument that Mr. Welsh has made, I think, is absolutely on target. This smells to me like a bait and switch, and I'm very, very concerned about the negative impact this will have on the community.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking the time calling in. Next caller, please.
Caller ending with 2724. You're on the line.
Hello, yes.
Cheryl Dayton.
Hold on.
You got to mute your TV.
Is that better?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please raise your right hand and state your name and address for the record.
Yes, this is Janet Dayton, and I live at 35 Toilsome Lane.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Go ahead, Janet, please.
Okay. This is a little tricky. Anyway, so much has been said that both my husband and I and the whole family must agree with. So I will not add to that, except that I did want to say that I had just finished reading a short article about breweries on Eastern Long Island, and it was very disturbing as to what they all have in common. And they not only include beer, wine, and other alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages. Some have kitchens, but others have food trucks. All have indoor and outdoor seating. And of course, there's always music and special events, which was also stated, I believe, at the August meeting where this was all being proposed, that sometimes special events would happen. However, at many of these other places, special events are happening on a nightly basis. The other thing was that a lot of these places are taking place on large farms, one being 80-plus acres and another one being 43 acres, and definitely not in this area. Everyone, of course, we're all concerned with the safety and the quality of life in East Hampton and our beautiful village. And so I believe the village needs to address the effect on the environment, such as the air quality, the noise, what's happening to the land, and especially the water supply or possible pollution. And never mind, aside from all the traffic safety. So I implore the village to look at their code and enforce all their regulations that would control the noise, unruly customers and premises. And we cannot continue to be lax regarding rules and regulations on what's happening in our fast and furious development in our beautiful village. So I would like the DRB and the ZBA to be very, very scrutinize this application very carefully, and hopefully it can be all reconsidered and protect our village. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dayton. Thank you for taking the time. Next caller, please.
Next caller, ending in 8988. You're on the air.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Let me swear you in. Please raise your right hand and state your name and address for the record.
Kay Spear Gibson. My address is number 30, Toilsome Lane.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I have been a resident of East Hampton Village for most of my life and a resident of Toilsome Lane for the past 22 years. And regarding this issue, I would like to read from the East Hampton Village Comprehensive Plan under the heading, Preserving the Village's Neighborhoods. I quote as follows. The comprehensive plan
does
places
this have
primary...
anything to do, ma'am, if I may, what has this to do with the building inspector's, A, whether or not he made an interpretation, or B, whether or not it was correct?
I understood we had an opportunity to speak and I haven't even begun. So may I finish,
You
please?
do, but you have an opportunity to speak only on what's before the board. And that's a very, very narrow issue.
May I finish? If the plan places primary
you're on
importance on
point, you
preserving
may.
and protecting the village's residential neighborhoods. So the two quotes that I'd like to highlight on the plan are, quote, mitigating the impacts of commercial and other non-residential uses on neighborhoods, and mitigating the impacts of traffic on residential neighborhoods and streets, and I end quote. The zoning code is intended to maintain the character of our residential neighborhoods and to protect our quiet enjoyment of our homes and neighborhood from the impacts of adjacent commercial uses. Please uphold the zoning code by confirming that the proposed Toilsome Lane Brewing Company, with its 2 tasting rooms, 2 bars, brewery, and outdoor beer garden, is not a permitted use under the definition of a restaurant. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. Can we move on to the next caller, please? Thank you for taking the time.
Yes, caller ending in 9215. You are on the air.
Good afternoon. My name is Ron Lewinberg. I've lived at 16 Toilsome Lane.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth? Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lundberg. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. As stated, I've lived at 16 Toilsome Lane. My family has owned that property since 1978. I've lived there on and off as long as I can remember, and this is quite important since we're right near it. Most of my comments would have been relevant to the public meeting or the rather unusual meeting in August, and I wasn't allowed to address issues of safety and damage to the community and neighborhood. Therefore, I'll limit my comments purely to those of zoning. This isn't a restaurant that serves beer. These are multiple bars and a brewery and is therefore a tavern. The entire purpose of which is to sell alcohol produced at the brewery. The cooking food, serving food is secondary to this and meant to promote selling of alcohol. As such, this is a tavern and not a restaurant, and this is not a neighborhood zone to have such a structure, and it is entirely improper for one to be there as such. That was really all I wanted to say.
So thank you for that. That was directly on point. Thank you.
Thank you. The next caller, please.
Going to the next caller, ending with 3659. You're on the air. Give me 1 sec.
Take your time.
3659. You're on the air.
Hi, I think this is a repeat call. This is Sandra McManus, and I've already spoken.
Oh, sorry about that. Going to the next caller.
That's all right.
Caller ending with 6763. You're on the air. Six seven six three. You're on the air. Is this a repeat as well?
Hello. Yes, this is.
Hi.
Hello, this is Peter Chase.
Peter, Pam, can you please?
Hello.
Sure. Mr. Chase, please raise your right hand and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Peter Chase, and I live at 22 Toilsome Lane in East Hampton.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I have nothing really specific to add, but I think it's really important that the board understands how many concerned residents there are. And as the president of the board of the village townhouses directly across from 17 Toilsome Lane, I can speak for many in our community who have expressed extreme concern, and concern specifically that this is being defined now as a restaurant that serves beer, when, as Mr. Lewinberg said, it obviously is a tavern being disguised as a restaurant. We're very concerned. We're concerned about danger factors, noise factors, and we just really ask that the proper determination be made and that this be very, very seriously considered, and that the concerns of the many residents in this part of the village have. And I thank you for your time, and I applaud the spirit of transparency going forward. I think it really is important that we all have a forum in which to voice our concerns and share them with the board. So thank you very much.
And Mr. Chase, I would urge you to go to the village website, and Mr. Messina said, sign yourself up for the updates for the ZBA and the DRB meet and the planning board. Thank you. Next caller, please.
Moving on. Caller ending with 0909. You're on the air.
Yes, Jeff Shangold, 37 Gingerbread Lane, East Hampton.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Please go ahead, sir.
Yes, this call is directly related to what the subject matter of this hearing, and it's about the building inspection and also the standards that are used for zoning. Much is being made on the distinction, both on the applicant side and in Mr. Walsh's presentation, a distinction between a bar, a tavern, a restaurant, and even an open concert space for concert venues. The question that we have to the board is primarily involved in what is used as a matrix for these definitions. In other words, if Fresno and Sam's reduced their food sales down to 5% and only had 95% liquor and alcohol, would they then be restated as a different zoning business? In this case, what does the board deem a bar, a tavern versus a restaurant or an open space concert venue or some sort of a cinema hall? Is there a different matrix that's used, or is it simply a label that's being applied to a business? Maybe Mr. Walsh can answer that, or maybe the board can answer that for us.
Hey. That it, sir?
Okay.
Thank you. Could we go to the next caller, please?
Next caller, 0096. You're on the air.
Thank you. My name is Pam Cataletto. I live at
Can you just lower your television? Mute the television in the back.
I did. Thank you.
Pam, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
I do, Pam. Thank you.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Pam.
John and I would like to go on record to agree with the Aarons and Mr. Walsh on their interpretation of the zoning, and we hope the board will see their right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Next caller, please.
Next caller, ending with 8287. You're on the line. Give me one sec. It seems like they have disconnected.
Okay. Next caller, please.
That seems like all the callers. We can go back to some that did not answer if you'd like, or we can move on.
I think we can, whatever the board would like, I think we can move on. I mean, I think if you want to give them a chance to talk, we can.
Here's a new caller right here. Caller ending with 6643. You're on the air.
Seen that number.
Hello, this is Maureen Bluedorn, and I live at, Pam, do you want to swear me in?
Yes, please. Please raise your right hand and state your name and address for the record.
Maureen Bluedorn, 41 Buell Lane, East Hampton.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Please proceed, Maureen. Thank you.
Thank you. I also just want to go on record in supporting both council's positions and Mr. Aaron's position, and my neighbors, who are totally, I haven't heard anyone speak for this brewery, tavern, event space, restaurant, and it is totally out of place. So I want to go on record in supporting my neighbors in a better review, more public review process of this brewery. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you for taking the time. Any other callers?
Those are all the callers that answered when we clicked on them. If you want to go back.
I don't, but I don't know if any of the board members. Philip?
Okay.
Yeah, I'd just like to hear from Mr. Balsam.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connell. So I do want to make some comments for the sake of the record. Before I do that, I do want to acknowledge and appreciate the concerns that are expressed today and have been expressed, and obviously will be expressed in the appropriate form at the DRB. And we'll look forward to working with and talking with the neighbors and on those concerns. But again, obviously, for the purposes of today's question at hand, I wanted to point out that what was set forth in the initial application was most certainly a restaurant as that is defined in the village code. This project shares basically, many, if not all, of the typical characteristics of a restaurant. We've got an extensive kitchen. We are not keeping late night hours. The project's going to keep typical restaurant hours, as was mentioned in the at the August 3rd DRB meeting. The restaurant serves full sit-down meals. The layout is that of a typical restaurant. The tables, the seating, etc. The bar area, it's in, I would say, similar proportion to what any of us would consider to be a typical restaurant. The kitchen, at over 1,500 square feet is probably above average size for a kitchen area. You saw on the plans the amount of space that the kitchen itself takes up. This is clearly, with all that in mind, falls into the definition of a restaurant, albeit one that makes its own beer. And frankly, this was all set forth in our application. Mr. O'Connell, you correctly pointed out that you quoted the minutes, which I was actually likewise going to do. Where the first thing I said at the August 3rd DRB meeting is that the proposal was to remove the tile cow barn, replace it with a new addition to the existing block building, and have a restaurant that basically brews its own beer. And I'm reading directly out of the minutes here. There would be a restaurant component, a beer production component, and a kitchen component. So, I too like the phrase, if it walks like a duck and quack like a duck, etc. And I would apply that same phrase to our project here. This has all the components of a restaurant. On the flip side, as was stated, bars and taverns, they're not defined in the code. So when that happens, we have to go to the general meaning. And so, what's a bar? What's a tavern? They clearly imply a focus on late nights. I can't think of a single bar or tavern as I would think of those sorts of operations to close after dinner service. A bar or tavern would have little or no food offerings, certainly no significant area devoted to food preparation. In terms of a layout, a bar might contain stools or a standing area, I don't know, maybe games. certainly few tables or amenities for dining. I'd also like to address the notion of casual food, which is a term I used in the application. The neighbor's submission is used Nick and Tony's as an example of what they would consider to be a restaurant. And when I say casual food, that's not. I use that term intending to say that we are not something like Nick and Tony's. We are not proposing to be what I consider a fine dining establishment. That's the point of the word casual food. But casual food does not imply a hot dog served in paper. It just simply implies that we're not of what I'd call a fine dining operation. And I say this slightly tongue in cheek, but even though we're in the Hamptons, I think we can all agree that not every restaurant has to be of the high caliber that Nick and Tony's is. And again, for the sake of the record, I want to address the other examples given by the applicant in their filings, or not the applicant, I'm sorry, the appellant. The Jamesport Brewery, I believe, has 0 food offerings that are generated by itself. I think they have. I don't want to speak out of school, but I think they have food trucks and whatnot as their from time to time as their sole source of food. But again, this project is not in any way analogous to the Jamesport Farm Brewery or the Uber Geek Brewery, which the menu there contains two items: soft pretzels and chips, either of which can be purchased for $1. That's clearly not the casual food aspect that we're referring to. It's not the same thing. Again, we have substantial resources of the project devoted to the kitchen, and it as was submitted. I think the building inspector was well positioned to make a call that this was the allowable use. I spoke about in my written submission, my memo. I addressed the other aspects. I'll just touch on them briefly. Again, you have the light manufacturing, which is the beer component and the restaurant component. Both would be allowed uses. They can work in concert with each other. That's clear in the code. And even to quickly touch on the beer garden aspect, in the plain, looking at its plain meaning, or even looking at the definition that is submitted by the appellants, they basically are saying, look, it's a communal space serving beer and traditional food. It creates a notion of belonging, social acceptance, cheerfulness, the absence of anything hectic, and the opportunity to spend quality time. I couldn't think of a better definition that speaks to the fabric of what a restaurant is than that.
Mr. Paulson, if I may, please, let me ask you, just so that the record is clear. You have a proposal into DRB. Is that a final proposal that you're asking for a vote on, or is that okay? Can you explain that?
Yeah, I can elaborate on that. In fact, in the minutes, I believe it's reflected in the minutes from that meeting. I made it clear that this was not intended to be a final proposal. It was basically at the suggestion of the village. Look, let's start the application process, get the ball rolling. Let's get a feel for the initial application, and then we will see what things need to be submitted in addition to. So no, Mr. Messina, that August 3rd, the initial application was not in any way intended to be a final submission, and we acknowledge that at the hearing, or whatever it was on August 3rd.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Balsam. Are you done, Alex?
I am. Thank you.
Okay. Board members?
I have some questions for Billy Hajek.
Billy?
So, I think you're the right person to address this to. I apologize if not. mattered before us seems to be as I understand it, and has been explained by counsel, is the determination regarding, what is and is not an appropriate zoning interpretation regarding restaurants, taverns, and breweries. And clearly,
there was an interpretation made at all. Correct.
Right, and clearly, restaurants and breweries are permitted in this location, as I understand it, according to the zoning. And a tavern bar is not permitted. Is that correct?
Well, yes to the first part. So a restaurant is listed in the code as a permitted use. The code allows or permits manufacturing, and including food products. So making beer is manufacturing. Whether or not, if you had to qualify, or if somebody proposed a nightclub, I don't believe it's prohibited by the code. The code provides, it's not listed as a specifically permitted or prohibited use in the code, but it does provide, the code contains parking requirements for a discotheque or a nightclub or a tavern, which would assume that it's a permitted, it's allowed in, it's allowable use in a commercial zone. And any use that's permitted in a commercial zone, or the core commercial, is permitted in the manufacturing zone.
So that's wanted to ask, I think anticipated my follow-up question, which is where, if anywhere, in the village are bars, tavern, and bars and taverns? We can, you can throw in discos or clubs or whatever they're called now for the for the criteria. Where are they permitted in the village?
Well, they're not listed as specific uses in the code. They're not listed as permitted or prohibited. So you'd have to imply that they're permissible in commercial zones.
So understood. So I just want to make sure. Let me take a step back. I think I understand. So while there are specific uses called out for restaurants and for manufacturing facilities, there are no specific call outs for restaurants, for taverns, bars, or nightclubs.
Except for the parking requirements. Yes.
Except for specific parking regulations that apply.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Was that, I guess I would just ask the appellant, Mr. Walsh, do you have anything to add based on that information?
Yes, I'd like to respond to just a few things, a few questions I think that were posed this afternoon. Number one, about the application and whether or not this application proposed a restaurant use. I was very careful in my submission to point to the application itself. If you look at page 2 of the application, where the applicant was requested to state what the proposed use of the project was to be, it is blank. You don't see the word restaurant. What you see is an addendum to that application, an addendum. The addendum, nowhere in the addendum is the word restaurant used. The point here is, how would you know that a restaurant was being used unless you were able to go to those minutes apparently that were of a colloquy between Mr. Balsam and the DRB on August 3rd after the application was filed? How would you know that a restaurant's being applied for? The plans themselves, the schematics, they don't mention the word restaurant. It says tasting room, tasting room, tasting room. So insofar as the application is concerned, you do not see the word restaurant in that application. There is one place you see it, and I don't want to play Where's Waldo here with the board, but buried in the septic calculation on one of the schematics that was, I assume, was prepared by one of the architects, is the word restaurant bar. And apparently when they went to the health department, they're using a restaurant calculation for purposes of their health department application, not for their use that's been presented to the DRB, but for the restaurant calculation. And we'll take that up with the health department. That's another question for another day. But my point, Mr. O'Connell, when you raised it, was what was proposed in the four corners of this application was clearly not a restaurant, number one. Number two, one of the callers mentioned that how do you determine what the use is? Oh, how do you sort out all of these issues? Is it a restaurant? Is it a bar? It serves alcohol. I think he posed a hypothetical. If you reduce the sale of food to 5%, increase the sale of alcohol to 95%, are you still a restaurant? Well, that's for the board to find and determine. But typically, when we look at the definition, when we try to examine an application to determine what the use is, we talk in terms of substantial, we talk in terms of principal, primary. What percentage of the use, the floor area, is devoted to each use? And I suggest Mr. Hajek has advised your board that the fact that a tavern is not defined in the code, a tap room is not defined in the code, a bar is not defined in the code, somehow it's the lack of a definition in the code results in that use being permitted. Well, I challenge that statement and that assertion because the law in the state of New York, and I can certainly brief this for the board, says exactly the opposite. In fact, your code, if a use is not listed as permitted, it is prohibited. Number one. Number two, what is the use? What are we talking about here? If you look at the areas that are dedicated to the service of alcohol, the service of the beer, the two tasting rooms, the beer garden, and this so-called brewery patio, you come up with a square footage of between 6,800 and 7,000 square feet of this facility. How can anyone conclude that this is other than a use that is substantially, primarily, and principally a tavern dedicated to the sale and service of beer? Look at the design of the room. Look at the firm that designed it. The firm that designed it is in the business of designing what they call brewery tap rooms. So, and by the way, this word casual service of food, I looked up the definition when Mr. Balsam was speaking, and if you look at the dictionary, the definition of casual is not repeated or permanent. Not repeated or permanent. Casual service of food. That indicates immediately the use of that terminology, that it's accessory. That's a zoning term. It's an accessory use. The food is accessory to the beer, service and sales. That is as obvious from this application as any fact I think that's been presented to your board today. The service of food is accessory to the service of the beer. You don't get a restaurant use, particularly under your definition. I noticed no one today, not one person that spoke on behalf of the applicant or none of the board members or Mr. Hajek referenced the definition of restaurant, which is unique in your code. Your code specifically says that a restaurant cannot include any form, very broad words, any form of a bar or tavern. Any form of a bar or tavern. It's a use that is solely dedicated to the preparation and service of food in furnished dining areas. Solely, another very strong term, very limited in its breadth. So how you get a restaurant from a project that's presented to you that contains approximately 7,000 square feet of beer, tavern, bar service area, and the casual service of food, which again is not repeated or permanent, dictionary definition, how you get that in light of the definition in your village of a restaurant, which prohibits a bar or a tavern, I don't know how you get there. I think we have to go back to the application. We have to look at the four corners of the application, and we have to look at what the usual, reasonable, rational, customary meanings of these terms are. We've presented to you. We all know what a tavern is. We know what a brewery tap room is. By the way, look at the designer's website. The designer that designed this project from Austin, Texas, they're in the business of designing brewery tap rooms. I implore the board to look at their website. Very, very helpful. They'll tell you what this use is. Screams out, it's a brewery tap room. It's a tavern. It is not a restaurant. I don't know what the board's pleasure is. If you need any more memoranda, any more writings on this subject, but if you choose to leave the record open just for written submissions, I would be glad to brief this point, save your attorney a lot of time. I know he's very knowledgeable in the zoning world. I know he's got a lot of experience. Any way we can assist in briefing these issues, I'm sure Mr. Balsam will do the same thing. If you leave it open for a short period of time, we can certainly brief these issues, tighten up the presentation so that the issues are very narrow, as you indicated at the beginning of the hearing, Mr. Chairman, and we can get to a determination that's both rational and based on the applicable law that applies to these matters in the state of New York. And I really appreciate the time that you've given us today, and you're accommodating us with these Zoom meetings. Ms. Pam Bennett, by the way, has been absolutely extraordinary throughout this proceeding in opening her files and responding on a very, very timely basis. And I can't thank her enough on behalf of my clients. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Pleasure of the board. Go ahead, Joe.
One follow-up question just to Billy, based on what he said and thinking about it. So in the event, not taking an opinion, just hearing what you said, Billy, about the additional or different requirements as laid out in the zoning code for a bar, tavern, or nightclub, how do those differ? And this is not to get into those from what we do. That's the responsibility of another entity. But what are the different, based on the implications of the determination, what are the factual differences in terms of the requirements of one kind of use versus the other on that basis?
I don't know if I follow the question.
I'm sorry. So if it were a restaurant or a manufacturing facility, it would be one thing. You said there were different requirements spelled out for bars, taverns, or
there's different parking requirements for one versus the other. There's obviously different sanitary requirements for manufacturing versus a restaurant. I'm
just saying, pursuant to the one that goes towards the restaurant v. tavern, as opposed to the what are the differences in terms of parking requirements of the like?
I thought you were talking about the manufacturing component of it, comparing manufacturing. No, so the parking requirement for a restaurant and a bar tavern, I believe, are the same, which is 1 per 3 permanent seats. But let me just pull that up because I don't want to misspeak. Just bear with me a second. Okay. So a restaurant is 1 parking space per 3 seats, plus 1 parking space per employee. The requirement for bars, nightclubs, discos, and dance halls are 2 parking spaces per 3 seats, plus 1 parking space per employee. And if it were a space of public assembly, it would be 1 parking space per 3 seats plus parking for each employee. And based on my review of the code of their plan, they were providing parking based on the restaurant requirements and manufacturing.
Which is a different, it comes out to a difference of.
I didn't run the calculations for comparing them because I haven't compared them, but.
No, I understand, but it's a marginal difference.
Yeah, it's marginal. It's
a marginal difference in the number of parking spaces is what you're saying.
I think it would depend on how you're functioning your business, how many employees you have and whatnot.
Are there different noise requirements in terms of live music?
So a restaurant prohibits the use of the facility as a discotheque, and the village has long interpreted a discotheque to mean live music. So live music would be prohibited at a restaurant. That's how the village has been interpreting that provision in the code for as long as I've been here.
Does that include DJ too? Is that live music?
I don't know. That'd be a question for the building inspector.
That'll be a new interpretation.
Yeah.
So, do we want to keep the record open? Yes, Phil.
I got a couple more questions for Mr. Walsh, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
So, Mr. Walsh, based on the definition that was included in your application, if the sale of alcohol is incidental to the food, the preparation and sale of food, and it would then qualify as a restaurant and be permissible here.
Correct statement. Correct statement.
Okay. And if there was manufacturing of beer, not in this brew pub setting, that in itself would be permissible under our village code, is my reading.
That's an open question. The term manufacturing, we know, is not defined in your code. Typically, planners look to other sources in order to define uses. One of our submissions back in October included the SIC code definitions of breweries, of manufacturing of beer, and what we concluded that the production and sale of beer on site for consumption on site is not manufacturing under the standard industrial classification code. If you were to produce the beer and truck it off site, that's an entirely different matter. That would fall under the wholesale sale of non-durable goods under the SIC code. And I would submit, Mr. O'Connell, that could constitute manufacturing, given the right a plan and the right set of circumstances. But no, a brewery in and of itself, a craft brewery that serves beer on site is not manufacturing just because you brew the beer on site. It's not manufacturing.
Okay. And I just had a couple more questions. So I think of a bar as something like Stephen's Talkhouse or Murph's in Sag Harbor, where there's really no food coming out. So I'm just trying to get an idea from you. Something like the Shagwan Restaurant and Tavern in Montauk. If you're not familiar, just say you're not.
I'm familiar with it.
Okay.
Yeah. Shagwan, you sit down and you eat food, and there's a large bar. That to me is a restaurant, restaurant bar restaurant. But that's not what we're dealing with here. The Toilsome Lane Brewing Company is a tavern in the first instance. If you look at the plan, what do you see? You see a bar set up with beer. You see tables set up with beer. Compare that to these brew pubs that we see on the East End and Riverhead on the North Fork. We don't have many on the South Fork at all. But compare the design of what's been presented to you in this plan and the design of a brew pub, brewery, tap room, tavern. They're exactly the same. We've presented photographs to you. what happens in a brewery where the beer is being produced on site. You've got these tables, no tablecloths, no place settings, very casual food, as Mr. Balsam refers to it. It's beer. It's the sale of pints of beer, ales and beer. Look at any of these websites. Go to them, visit these places. I've been to about 5 myself. It's the same use. It's the same setup. The beer is presented on a very long bar. There's a chalkboard describing the types of craft beer. We've all been to these places, most of us anyway.
You know, Mr. Walsh,
Mr. Chairman, you may have to arrange a field trip for the board.
I was just going to say, I want Mr. Walsh's job where you get to go visit bars.
I'll be the designated driver. I'll be the designated driver. Yeah, the food is very casual. It is not a restaurant. When you walk into a brewery tap room or a brewery tavern or a brewery pub, you're not walking into a restaurant. You're walking into a beer hall, in effect. By the way, there's not much been said about the beer garden. Do some research on beer gardens, what they're all about. By the way, I don't think my client has any objection to beer gardens or taverns or tap rooms or otherwise, but in this location, under the zoning scheme that's in place in your village, can't do it. It's prohibited. I don't think anyone will argue that substantially the principal use and the activity here is going to be the sale of beer. Where's the revenue going to come from? It's not going to come from the pizza. Apparently, when you look at the site, at the plan, they're serving pizza. That seems to be what's presented in the plan on the schematics. The money's not going to come from the pizza. The money's coming from the $8 to $10 to $12 pints that are going to be served across the bar and at the tables and in the beer garden. This is not a restaurant, particularly in light of your definition.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Jimmy, you have anything to say? Unmute yourself.
I would just ask that we be given a very short time to address these issues in writing. I like to put these things in writing. This way it's clear exactly what our position is. And I think it assists whoever's going to be reviewing the file and drafting the determination to draw up a determination that is consistent with what transpired on the record.
Mr. Chairman, if Mr. Balsam is so inclined, I would urge that the board give them a 30-day window.
I agree with you.
To submit, please.
I agree with you, Mr. Messina. Alex, you okay with that?
Well, my opinion is that I think the dead horse has been beaten. We've, a lot of filings have been made here. A lot has been said in writing. I personally would like to move on with my life and do other things. I think we would be beating a dead horse with other written submissions at this point, but obviously that's not that's your guys' call. I'll go along with whatever you guys think, but that's my 2 cents.
Thank you,
Alex. Mr. Chair, I'd also like, I assume some of the other members might also have some ongoing questions to our counsel, just for some guidance, so.
Yeah,
I would suggest we keep the record open.
I think we should keep the record open, and
I agree.
So
I would also, as you can see, we have hundreds of pages of paper that was filed, and some of these just came in within the last less than 24 hours. So I would ask that we keep the record open.
So Pam, we'll keep the record open until the next meeting on.
That is February 11th.
Okay. Thank you all. Is
that just for written submissions? Tell me.
I think it's written submissions. That's what Mr. Walsh asked for.
Okay.
Thank you. Make a motion to close the meeting.
Make a motion.
Second, please.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you all for being patient, and have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Safe, everyone.
Thank you.